Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Katie Wismer. I'm an author and an editor. I have 10 books out currently. Welcome to the first video of 2024. So today's video is going to be a little bit different than it's been in years past. This is something I tend to do every year. And as I was putting together the numbers, I still made all of the pie charts and all of the stats and everything, don't you worry. But I used to do like a working for myself update check-in kind of video, and then also like a how many books did I sell this year video, and an income report video, and a goals video, and a planning video. The end of the year was like prime time for content over here. As I was putting all this together, I just realized the working for myself update video, I feel like we've kind of outgrown it. Because the purpose of that really was to look at my different jobs and where my income was coming from, how different jobs were growing. We've just hit a point in my career where there's not a lot of change, and I don't expect there to be a lot of change. So the videos weren't that interesting anymore. So this video, we're gonna kind of combine the two. I still did make a few of the old pie charts, but this is mostly gonna be about the book sales and whatnot. I've got a lot of, I think, fun graphs, so we'll get into it. Basically this year I'm just combining the two videos, and I think we're going to discontinue that first style of video moving forward. With that said, if you haven't seen the previous year's videos, if you're curious, I'll link a ton of stuff down below. As always, all my books are down there. Really briefly, in case anyone's new here, my name's Katie Wismer. I'm an indie author. I've self-published all of my books. Like I said, I have 10 out now. My first one came out in 2018, but I really started self-publishing in 2020. I have 3 poetry collections: The Sweetest Kind of Poison, Poems to the End of the World, and Breakable Things. I have 3 contemporaries: The Anti-Virginity Pact, which is young adult; The Anti-Relationship Year, which is new adult; and Broken Perfect Lies, which is more romantic suspense. And then I have 1 dark fantasy romance series, which is complete now. 4 books: The Marionettes, Wicked Souls, Bloodless Ties, and Ruthless Ends. Those are my books. I'm now 27 years old. I started working for myself back in 2020. It's now 2024. I think that's all you need to know. Let's get into it. So I like to show you charts of how this year went, and then I also make some comparing previous years. So let's start with just the stuff from this year. And even though we're not doing the working for myself kind of update video, we're gonna start with those type of charts. So first we have my income stream. So you can pretty much tell just looking at this chart in particular why I don't feel like it's super interesting to talk about the breakdown of the different jobs anymore. Books is clearly the majority at about 70%. My socials category is 15%. A lot of things go into this: the YouTube channel, my Patreon, affiliate links, all of that, sponsorships, all that kind of stuff. I do some freelance editing on the side. I've been really scaling back on that over the past couple of years. That's at 11%. I have a rental property in Denver, Colorado. That is about 3%. I don't think I want to get into all of that. In years past, it's been more than that. This year, stuff happened where I had, months where it was vacant and stuff like that. So it just thankfully wasn't a loss this year, but also didn't bring in a lot of money. That makes it sound like it was vacant a lot. It's not. It's just sometimes I'll have people move in like the first week of the month and then move out like the second week of the month, and then there's like a week in between where you wait for the next person to come in, and those like 1 weeks in between random clients, it adds up. Anyway, other is 2%. Yeah, we won't get into this. It's just like some random money that comes in some other places. Now we're gonna get into book sales specific stuff. Everything I'm gonna be showing you is either based on percentages, or I'll show you actual unit sales. I'm not gonna go into dollar amounts though. That's all stuff that I talk about in the income report that goes up on Patreon later this month. But the next chart is on book sales, so you can see which books were selling the most this year. Clearly coming in at number 1, we have The Marionettes at about 30%. Behind that, at number 2, Wicked Souls, the second book in the series, 21%. And it pretty much just follows the whole series. Bloodless Ties at 3rd place, 18%. And then Ruthless Ends is in 4th place at 10%. The Anti-Relationship Year edged it out a little bit at 10.7, but Ruthless Ends just came out, so give her some time. Then you can see The Anti-Virginity Pact at 2.5, Broken Perfect Lies at 6.5, and I ended up just lumping all 3 of my poetry collections together this year because it was so insignificant. There was no need to go into each. 1.7%. Now I did grab a screenshot of what this chart looked like in the previous video. So this time last year, the Anti-Relationship Year was definitely the front runner at over 45%, and I can see this year it's all the way down to 10%. So things changed pretty drastically this year. But out of curiosity, this wasn't enough for me. I wanted to see how all of my books compared in their lifetime sales as well as just this year, which would be this chart. And I wasn't sure if the Marionettes was gonna get first place, but it did very, very narrowly at 26.8%. The Marionettes book one is now my all-time bestseller. The Anti-Relationship Year is in a close second at 26.1%. Then we have Wicked Souls at 17.2, Bloodless Ties at 10.6, The Anti-Virginity Pact at 6.6. Collectively, my poetry is at 5.4. It's interesting because poetry on the last couple of years has been so low, but you can still see they sold so well when they first came out that they're still pretty significant compared to the lower two. Broken Perfect Lies at 2.8 and Roots Lens at 4.4. This chart also only accounts for paid book sales. I also did 2 free promotions this year and gave away a lot of books for free. So if we were counting those, the Anti-Relationship Year would have more copies out in the world. But for sold copies, Marionettes is book number 1. Now, some other stats that people tend to ask me about. A common question I get is how many of my sales are through Kindle Unlimited because all of my novels are available in KU. I think this chart looks about the same as it did last year. Kindle Unlimited, 65% of my book sales. Just outward sales of the ebook, 13%, audio, 7%, and physical copies. This goes for paperbacks and hardcovers, and signed copies through me, 15%. So ebooks clearly rule for me. Kindle Unlimited rules for me. It's one of those things, I'm obviously very dependent on Amazon. It's where we'll get into that. That's another chart as well, which is scary to have all of your eggs in one basket. I've heard, you know, you've probably heard a lot of people's negative talk about Kindle Unlimited, and it's something that it does so well for me right now. I really cannot imagine pulling my books out and going wide. I actually was wide at the beginning of my career, and then I transitioned into Kindle Unlimited in 2021, and my book sales just look so different. I don't even think I would be able to be an author full-time if not for Kindle Unlimited. So if it's a decision you're trying to make for yourself, I wouldn't blindly listen to what everyone else is saying. There's going to be a lot of people who shit talk KU, and it definitely has its flaws, 100%. They make a lot of good points, but it's also the way that I'm able to make a living. So going off of what I just said, here's a chart for the book sales by vendor. You can see about 52% of my book income came from Amazon this year. I also ran a Kickstarter, I think in September, which was for the Marionettes series. That ended up being about 35% of the income, not my total income, just the book income. Signed copies just through my website at 5.6%, Audible 4.3, Ingram Spark 2.6, and then I combined all of the others together because they were so insignificant for 0.5. That would be Draft Digital, Google, Barnes & Noble, etc. But clearly Amazon and the Kickstarter were the big hitters this year. The Kickstarter though, take it with a grain of salt because that's including all of the money that I got for the shipping and everything, and that's not deducting all of the expenses for the Kickstarter. So that is not sheer profit. I have not yet calculated all of that. I will be doing a video going over all of the Kickstarter stuff once I'm done fulfilling it. We're getting there. We're getting there. I was also just curious, so I took a look at book sales by country. I had a feeling it was going to be very disproportionate, but honestly I was kind of surprised at the degree. Almost 80% of my sales are in the country where I am, the United States, 9% in the UK, which I think that's only even that large of a chunk because I do a lot of advertising in the UK. Australia 3%, Canada 5%, and then everything else lumped together in other for 4%. Keep in mind this is just for this year though, this isn't for lifetime. Next I thought we would take a look at a month by month chart because you'll see my sales are definitely not consistent throughout the year. So here's what my book sales look like throughout the year. Clearly a big jump in February. That was a release month for me, but all of those sales actually weren't for my new release book. I think I just had some videos going viral on TikTok and whatnot. You can see my lowest month was June, and then we spiked back up towards the end of the year for November and December. This chart is so different than last year's, which is just, it's so interesting to see. I took a screenshot. It might be a little bit blurry from the previous year's video, but last year the summer was my best time. May was my best month, and then I had consistent sales through June, July, and August. That was my best time of the year, and those are my lowest sales month this year. So things change. Then I also decided to make a chart to look at book sales over the years starting in 2020, and this chart is interesting to look at. You can see 2022 and 2023. I sold almost exactly the same number of books this year that I did last year, a little bit more, but almost exact. Which for a while I was feeling kind of down about this year and how I did, because you can see from 2021 to 2022 I saw massive growth. So staying about the same as last year felt like a step back. Like I wasn't seeing the same kind of growth that I saw last year. Like obviously last year seeing that growth was like really exciting, and I kind of had to remind myself, like, you were so thrilled. You're seeing the numbers you saw last year, and last year you were so thrilled at seeing these numbers. You can't be so dependent on whether or not it was growing. Like this baseline is still good. Also, just to look at it in a slightly different way, I made this chart to look at which books sold the most. You can clearly see the Marionettes is high above the rest, and then I did this one to include the paid books and then also the free ones I gave away, so you can see the anti-relationship year definitely jumps up if you include that. The Marionettes and the anti-relationship year were the two books that were set free for a small period of time this year. My camera's dying. Can we squeeze this in, or am I gonna have to go charge it and then come back? I really just have a few more little graphics. I didn't end up comparing every single one of my books to previous year's sales because we're just getting to, I have too many books out now to do that. So I lumped them together based on genre, which I actually think ended up being really interesting. So for the contemporary books, you can see last year there were almost 12,000 sales, and this year just over 4,000. So clearly contemporary was a much larger focus for me last year. Those are the books that went viral. I did a lot of marketing for them, and this year they just were not my largest sellers. But then if you look at my fantasy numbers, which is really just my Marionette series, about 10,000 last year, closer to 18,000 this year. I think this is for a lot of different reasons. I really focused on the marketing for this series this year. The last book released, so now it's a complete series. And yeah, honestly, I focused on this one so much, maybe a little bit to the detriment of the other ones. I only had so much in my cup. There was only so many places it could go this year. And then I loved all the poetry together. 616 last year compared to 171 this year. Clearly the poetry is not a big seller. It's been going down every year for the past several years, and to be honest, I don't really think I marketed them much at all this year. But even when I do market them really hard, like in 2022, it clearly made a difference and there were more sales, but nothing in comparison to my other books. So I just feel like my time is better invested in other places because I could put the same amount of effort into marketing my contemporaries and see much better results. So moving forward, I really don't know what I'm gonna do with my poetry. I just kind of let them sit there for right now, which is a shame. I do love them. I do still feel proud of them, but is it worth the effort to try to sell them? Honestly, I don't know. And then the last graphic I have for you is totals. You can see very, very close both years, about 22,000 books, not including giving things away for free. These are just paid sales. Okay, we're back. I did have to go charge the camera, and the light is just, it's such a cloudy day. I've got no light in here. I think I was pretty much done anyway. If you want more about how this year went, I posted a really long video a few days ago. It's like 40 minutes long on how 2023 went as a whole, more of like a holistic wrap up. I'll have that link down below. All in all, 2023 ended up being more of like a maintenance year rather than a growth year for me. I did sell a little bit more than I did in the previous year, but it was about the same, although it looks very different, like which books were selling. In a lot of ways, 2023 felt like completing a cycle and closing a chapter. I finished a series that I've been working on basically since my career started. I've really narrowed down which genres I want to be working on in the future. I really want to stay within the genres I've been publishing in and not branch out anymore. I'm not going to be publishing poetry anymore. To be honest, all of the years leading up till now has been kind of my like experimental years, like figuring out what works for me and what I want out of my publishing career, what I like to write, what sells, what doesn't. Like, I've made my beginner mistakes. I'm sure I'm still gonna make mistakes, but I just kind of feel like these years leading up till now have been my learning years, and I am hopeful and optimistic and curious to see about where I go from here. I am still feeling like pretty burnt out from writing and such. If you want more on like my plans and stuff, that's in that 2023 wrap-up video. I did have you guys send in questions on Instagram, so I will answer a few here if I can, if I feel like they're relevant, if they're something I haven't answered before, or if I don't answer it, I will point you in the direction of where you can find the answer. Someone asked, have any of your audiobooks broken even yet? I actually just made an entire video doing like a deep dive on audiobooks. It's on Patreon. It looks like this, and we go book by book through all of the audiobook processes, all of the different sales, royalties, was it worth it, have I made my money back, have I made a profit? We go into all of the nitty-gritty in that video. A lot of these questions I've answered several times, so I just didn't want this to be super repetitive. Has publishing less books in a year affected royalties? No, not for me personally. Actually, the years when I have published fewer books have been my better sales years. The one year that I published the most was 2021, and if you saw that earlier chart of the book sales, 2021 I sold like nothing compared to what I'm selling now. Is that because I have more time to put towards marketing? Is it just the natural trajectory of like having a larger backlist and you start to build on yourself in your career? I think it's a little bit of both. In my experience in my career so far, my new releases are never, like, I don't depend on them for my royalties. My best sales months are often because a backlist title is selling really well, not because a new book release just came out. My book releases all tend to do honestly kind of about the same. And then when books really take off for me, it's oftentimes after release. I've never had a book like really take off right at release, but that's just been my experience. Has having a completed series been profitable? Yes, although profitable honestly isn't really something that I measure success by. For me personally, it just doesn't really do anything for me. All of my books are profitable. All of them have made back the money I've invested within them, usually within the pre-order period, if not within like the first week of release. So that's not really something that I measure for myself to like gauge success. But it is the Marionettes series more profitable now that it's complete. It's been doing really well. I don't know if that's because it's been complete and now more people are willing to read it, or if it's just been like the luck of the draw and like that just happens to be the timing. And it feels kind of coincidental, although I do think it does make a difference because a lot of people won't pick up a series until it's complete. But I've brought in so many new readers to this series within just like the past couple of months, people just now getting into book 1 or book 2, which didn't really have anything to do with the series being complete. It ended up being kind of coincidental timing when things went viral about the book. So I feel like so many of my answers are like, I don't know. Then I got a lot of questions about what am I excited about for this new year? What are my hopes for the new year? What surprised you the most this year? So I think that'll be a good like ending note. What surprised me the most this year? What did better or worse than you thought? Broken Perfect Lies was a new release that came out in February. It's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorite books I've written. It's one of my favorite things that I've published. And it hasn't sold super well yet. I'm kind of like hoping it'll have its moment at some point. I guess I did have higher expectations for that book. I did think it would be easier to sell, maybe coming out of in the previous year, the anti-relationship year sold so well, and those two books are the most similar genre-wise of all of my books. Like if I was going to compare Broken Perfect Lies to any book, it's like a spicier, darker version of the anti-relationship year. So because that at that point had been my bestseller, I was like, oh, this book is like that. It's gonna sell well as my bestseller. And that just hasn't been the case. It hasn't really taken off. We're still working on it. So that's been, it's done worse than I thought, but not like terribly, like it's done fine. My Kickstarter definitely did better than I thought. I really didn't expect as many orders as I got. Didn't expect all of the hiccups with fulfillment, and I continue to get damaged shipments in, which has really been slowing me down. But at the same time, I didn't expect as many people to back it, so I didn't expect that all of the damaged books that I've been getting to be like a weird little opportunity. Now I've been selling them for a discount on my website, and that ended up being a pretty significant source of income for me this year too. So I don't know, good things come in weird packages. As far as hopes for the new year, things I'm excited about for the new year, I'm hoping to just enjoy writing this year and write things for fun and kind of get back to the joy of it. Yeah, my last couple of books have been about, I have to write this next book in a series because there's that pressure on it, there's that expectation, I have this readership waiting for it. So my last several book releases have had a lot of pressure, a lot of forced deadlines, which I mean, I know I made them, I did it myself, but I don't know, it's kind of the feeling of like when you're forced to read a book for school, you don't like it just because you have to read it. Whereas if you were to read that book in any other setting, you might have enjoyed it more. So like writing a book because I feel like I have to, I feel like has sucked some of the fun out of it. So right now I'm just kind of writing things that I want to, and I don't want to give myself any feelings if I have to, which is why everyone keeps asking like, what's going to be next? What are your plans? When's the next release date? I don't know. And I'm not going to set anything because I don't want to put that structure on it. So I'm excited to see where the new year takes me and what projects I end up working on. I've been wrapping up a lot of things that I was in the middle of. I had to finish the Marionettes series. I went back and I finished Broken Perfect Lies, which has been on the back burner for a while. I'm working on Gracie's book, which has been on the back burner for a while. And once that's complete, I really have a fresh slate. Like I could do anything, I could go any direction, and I haven't had that in years. Like the last time I didn't have like the next book planned was 2020. It's been 4 years since I've really felt like I could write anything. There are no expectations. There's no next book that is expected. I'm kind of excited to not have any plans for 2024. That's what I'm looking forward to. I think that's how we're gonna end the video. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. If you want to see any of the videos that I talked about, I'll have a link down below. If you want to see previous year's wrap-ups and whatnot. The income report, which will be the second piece of this like end of the year wrap-up, will be a Patreon video. Other than that, I think I'll just see you guys in our next video very, very soon. Bye. No. Stone cold stunner. She was